Today we're making a tea mead with gift tea from John Sorry.
Gifty, get it? Okay, so this tea is made from this that you can't smell, but I wish you could because oh my god, it's amazing. It's hibiscus berry green. This is in a plastic bag. I can still smell it.
Now, if you watched our Viking Blood clone, that started as a hibiscus mead. And when we did tastings of it, we decided we actually liked the hibiscus mead better than we did the finished Viking Blood clone.
There was other issues with that clone though. We won't get into that.
Yes.
We're trying to block that out.
So, doing a tea mead with a hibiscus-based tea, we are both pretty excited about this.
This is going to be awesome. Just telling you right now. This is also a pretty simple one. We're not getting too complex with it. I think the tea actually adds a lot to the party already. So, we were told, based on a little bit of research on this tea, which there's going to be links to this below. We actually don't make any money on this one. I just thought it's that awesome that we wanted to spread the word. What had happened is, who did it? Who brought it?
John Sorry?
John Sorry, a VIP member of ours, actually you'll see his name at the end of the video, and that means you got to watch all the way to the end, works at a place where they ordered this. They order teas and things like that. He convinced them to order this stuff, and they got like, what, 7-8 bags of it, I guess? So
yeah,
it was a bunch.
We got a nice box full, so thanks, John.
And apparently nobody liked it. He loved it. He thought it was awesome. So he said, hey, can I send you guys this stuff and see what you can do with it?
And we said, yes, please.
Yeah, and right out of the box, oh my god, it's a hibiscus berry green tea. First, it smells amazing. And each of these bags is supposed to make 3 gallons. Well, I disagree for making mead that way. I usually like to concentrate my tea a little bit more. We overbrew it a little bit. So what I did is I got some boiling water, about a half gallon, and I put a tea bag, one of these tea bags into that. And then I filled it up the rest of the way with just some hot water. So it's been steeping for, I don't know, what, 10 minutes or so? Just before we started recording this. And
then we remembered hot things and yeast are bad.
We want it to be cooler. So it's cooling in the sink of water right now. I just want it to get down to like room temperature, below 115 really is what I want. But we can start on this anyway. To make this, I'm going to use McCoy's Orange Blossom Honey. Now,
can I interject?
You may interject.
Those of you who are not familiar with the flavor profile of hibiscus, it brings a lovely citrus note to a tea.
Citrusy floral. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's awesome.
So that's why Brian chose the Orange Blossom Honey.
It's kind of a cross between cranberry flowers.
Yes.
You know, if you cross cranberry and flowers together, that's kind of what hibiscus tea tastes like. By adding the berries to this, they gave it a little bit more sweet note, and then green tea. Unfortunately, I think the green tea kind of gets lost in this. So it's not as much of a thing. But it is still there, and that makes it interesting. And that's why I'm not using a lot of extra additives in this one. I think there's enough going on in that tea, even just what comes out of the tea bag, because we're not putting the tea bag in. It's going to be an all liquid ferment, so it's really, really nice and easy. This is a nice beginner one if you've never made mead before. This is going to be a really nice one. And I totally lost my train of thought. I was saying something else.
We're starting with the honey.
Right. The honey. And we went with the McCoys for 2 reasons. First, we actually really love various types of honeys. We don't use a lot of different kinds. Usually wildflower, clover on occasion, and the orange blossom. Orange blossom, as Derek was saying, because this is a fruity thing, it should bring that out more. We're also going to use Lalvin's 71 Beast. 71 Beast, yeah.
71 Beast is apropos because all of the brews we've done lately with 71B have just gone boom!
This is my new favorite yeast.
Yeah.
I'll just say that right now. We used D47 for a long, long time, and it did a good job. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them were starting to get odd sticks. They just weren't finishing out right. They weren't as clean. 71B has been amazing. Almost every single thing we made with it was just perfect right out of the gate. But now I'm just babbling, and someone's going to call me on it. So I'm going to weigh out 3 pounds of this honey. That should give us like a 1.105 gravity to start with, which comes out to like a 14 to 15% mead. I know it sounds pretty standard and traditional, but you know what? It is because it works.
Today we're using a wide mouth glass fermenter, and the reason why we're doing that is because we ran out of our other glass fermenters.
And we don't really want to have to go out and get more because, you know, there's a thing going on outside. So I'm just going to weigh out 3 pounds.
Okay, so that is what that amount of honey looks like
It's a lot of honey.
in a 1 gallon wide mouth fermenter.
And it took me so long to pour it that the scale shut off.
Right after we got to the right
as it hit 3
moment,
pounds.
so
it's
yay!
accurate.
Yeah. This is funny because I don't think we normally do the honey first, so we don't
Sometimes.
really have a visual.
Yeah, you don't usually see it.
Um,
It fills up quite a bit of the gallon.
so
Which
I'm
begs the
having a
question.
serious Winnie the Pooh moment right now, and I just want to grab that honey and run off and stick my hand in there and
Resist the urge.
it's
I'm gonna
honey,
put this
it's
away
yummy.
So here we have the tea. Now, as I explained earlier, or maybe I didn't, not really sure, this bag of tea that we had was supposed to make 3 gallons. Well, I like it to be a little bit more concentrated than that, so I made 1 gallon with it. Now, looking at this and trying to get all that in there, I don't think we're even going to get the full gallon of tea in there. But you know what? It's okay. This stuff tastes good. We're planning to drink it. Now, I did let this cool, okay? It's probably about 115 degrees or less right now, which means it's warm enough to help liquefy that honey, but not so warm that it'll harm the yeast, especially once it gets mixed in with the honey. So let's just get to mixing. The easiest way to do that is I'm just going to pour some of this tea right in. Now the tea bag is actually still in here. I'm just going to leave it in there while we do this. I'm only going to put, I don't know, maybe half of it in. And you can clearly see how it doesn't really mix automatically, okay? But look at that color. That is awesome. So I have my spoon of unusual size, which is actually a paddle. But we're calling it a spoon. Just work with me, okay? And all I'm going to do is just mix this up. I mean, this is pretty simple, really. As I do, I'm not afraid to get some air in this. There's been a lot of debate. A lot of people are confused. In the very beginning of a fermentation, you want to add, notice I'm trying to keep my mouth away as I talk. You want to add oxygen to the must, because by aerating it, you let the colony of yeast do its thing. It's called the aerobic phase, where they actually want to consume oxygen and they reproduce and they build up the colony. Then at some point, all the oxygen is consumed, okay? So there's none left in here, which means there's no harm of the next phase, the third phase, which could happen, and that is making vinegar. But anyway, the anaerobic phase then starts when there's no more oxygen, and that means they start to consume sugars and they produce CO2 and alcohol. Thus, that's why it's actually safe to oxygenate in the beginning, but bad in the end. Let me explain why it's bad at the end. Once there's alcohol present, the acetobacters, which are just a natural thing like yeast, they're in everything, the acetobacters, they eat alcohol and oxygen. So you have there's the 3 parts to this. It's like a triangle, okay? If you have oxygen and sugar, it works great for yeast. If you have oxygen and alcohol, it works great for acetobacters. So you want to be careful. While this is fermenting with an airlock on it, it's pushing out the oxygen. Therefore, all you have is CO2, no oxygen. Once this is done, if you were to introduce a bunch of oxygen to it, that's a great way to make vinegar. I'm going to mix this up, see when I'm done. Okay, this is mixed up pretty good. I am going to put some more in now, and then we're going to get a reading eventually. And I'm actually expecting this to be higher than the 1.105 because these jars aren't really a full gallon. So I'm going to get a little bit less than a gallon, which means the density of the honey is a little bit more, and you understand. I'm expecting this to be a rather healthy fermentation. So that's why I'm leaving a bit of room here. Maybe not as much as some people might think I should, but I'm leaving enough that if it starts to fuzz up or bubble up, it'll be fine. If you do see foam forming and drying on the side of your jar, that's called a Croissant line, and it's actually a perfectly normal part of fermentation. If you don't see it, you should be more worried than if you do see it. Although even if you don't see it, it doesn't mean your fermentation isn't working. I'm going to leave that in there for just a moment because I am going to take a reading now. Now, why do we take readings when we do things like this? Lots of reasons. First, I want to know if I'm overdoing it with the yeast, right? Because this is a 14% yeast. I don't want to make something that's like could have 30% in there. Because first, I'm going to crowd out the yeast. There's not going to be enough oxygen for them to be able to do anything with, and they won't ferment. The sweet spot for flavor is somewhere between like 8 and 15%. Okay, most commercial wines are in that range, and they do that on purpose. There's a reason. They know it tastes best that way. Sure, there's ports and things like that, but that's a whole different animal. Whoa. Okay. So what we have here is a 1.130. Guess what? I overdid it. So what we're going to try to do is add a little bit more of that tea back in here. I'm going to be greedy and try to make more instead of having that high of a gravity. Some people will say, oh, you can totally do that. And you know what? You probably can. I just really don't feel like taking that chance. 1.130 is only about 10 points higher than the max that I really like to go. So I'm just going to see if I can dilute this a touch more. Now, when we do the second part to this video, remember this moment, because I'll probably be kicking myself for putting that much more in because it overflowed and I had to get a blow-up tube or something. All right, that's as much as I dare. Give that a quick mix. Now, those of you that are wondering, I knew it was going to do that. I did it to show you guys something. You want to be very careful when you do all this. Can I have the baster back, please? Erica's laughing because she's going, yeah, sure you did. Now, I knew that because this is smaller than a gallon, it was going to do that. I didn't think it was going to go quite that high, but I thought it might be there. I mean, honestly, 1.130 versus the 1.105, it's 25 points. So, you know, it's not that much higher, but it's high enough that it could be a problem. And that's where, you know, just a little bit of that knowledge, a little bit of experience goes a long way here. And I didn't want to overdo it. I also don't want it to end up too sweet.
For those of you confused as why this might be a problem, is that there is such a thing as too much sugars for your yeast. You don't want to have your brewing solution to be so saturated with sugars that your yeast can't properly function.
Guess what? It's at 1.120 now. That's pretty much the theoretical max that I like to brew at, okay? Which just means I don't like to go much higher than that. So it starts at 1.120. We see where it goes. But for now, I'm going to add some yeast. Now, my rule on yeast, if you haven't heard it before, when you're using dry yeast like this, is a packet says it's supposed to be good for 5 gallons. Well, it might be. And some people will say, I throw the whole packet in. Well, I think that's a little wasteful and not necessary. It doesn't actually help your brew all that much. Because this amount that's in here, it's going to be 1,000 times more by the time this colony is ready to go. So putting in twice as much now really doesn't do a whole lot other than waste half a packet. So my rule is I put in half a packet for up to about 3 gallons. I put in a whole packet for over 3 gallons. If I'm making 3 gallons, it depends on my mood that day. If you're wondering about the hydration that we used to do, if you've seen any of our older videos, we used to hydrate the yeast all the time, constantly. Oh, by the way, this, we'll get a piece of tape put on it, and it's going back in the refrigerator with all of our other yeast. It was refrigerated until now, too. Even in a sealed packet, it lets stuff last a lot longer. I have yet to have a yeast not work, and some of them have been in there for months. But refrigerated, they work great. I'm going to mix this up. I was saying something else, though, a minute ago. Those of you those of you who have watched our other videos and saw that we hydrated the yeast, there was a reason. It's because I was always told that's what you do, and I wanted to make sure that the yeast was viable and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed a lot of the time they weren't even bubbling up in the cup or anything like that, so it kind of seemed pointless to me. And then I did some more research. A couple people told me to, that even the makers of the yeast say you don't need to do that. You don't have to, because they do a test beforehand, and there's extra stuff put in there. Basically, there's yeast nutrients put in there to help it become viable. All you got to do is put it in here and mix it up, which once I thought about it, I went, wow, you know what? Putting in a cup of water or a cup of this juice, mixing it up is the same thing as putting it in here and mixing it up. Huh, yeah, it's like a light bulb went off, and I went, duh. And now we just do it this way. We have had 0 issues as a result. And here's the thing. If after 3 or 4 days there's no fermentation, add more yeast. Probably not that packet, though, because it might be dead. So I'm just going to give this a good stir. Make sure that yeast gets all the way through there. If you're tempted to not use an airlock and instead just going to leave the lid loose or something like that, let me just explain something. This is entertainment value. How are you going to watch a little bloop bloop on the lid just crack? I'm kidding, but realistically, do you have to use an airlock to make brews? Of course not. You really don't. I always push them though because I'd rather be safe than sorry. This is like a $2 item. I know in other places it could cost as much as $10. I get it. But once you own them, they last for years. You'll get dozens and hundreds of brews out of one of these. To me, it's a worthy investment. It gives an idea that something might be happening, okay? It doesn't give you proof, but it's an idea. The speed of bubbles, don't even worry about that. Use your readings. Use actual science that way. But what this also does is it keeps bugs out. It keeps bacteria out. It keeps cat hair out. It keeps everything out of your brew. The first time you make a brew and you just leave the cap a little bit loose and you made it a little bit too tight, you'll know. It'll explode. That's not something I really want to happen. If you leave it too loose, bugs can get in. So there's that fine line of just right with the cap. I mean, if you can do that every time, more power to you. But I'd rather sit and watch bloop, bloop, bloop than have to worry about it. Because the first time you ruin a brew that way, you're going to go, damn, I should have listened to Brian and gotten the $2 airlock. Anyway, what are we going to do with this now? It's going to go sit under my desk because there's now room. We got rid of a couple things. And how long is it going to sit there? Well, it might be ready in just a couple of weeks. Might not. I'm going to probably let this go 4 weeks before I even look at it. Now, what I mean by that is I'm going to do this. Give it a swirl. Let it degas a little bit every day for the first week or so. After that, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to open it. I'm not going to do anything. The next time this gets opened is when you see it in about a month. So as always, thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.